Hi, Andy.
Hi, Christoph.
How are you today?
I'm good, thanks. How are you?
Quite all right. I think I should congratulate you to your latest publication.
Yeah, thanks. It's been an interesting experience publishing this thing.
Yeah, so I found this book on Amazon called Cognitive Frugality Preserves Self-Regulatory Resources, and you are listed as the author.
The title sounds very familiar. It sounds almost exactly like the title of my dissertation. I think maybe one or two words are changed. But the funny thing is, I didn't publish this book.
You didn't publish the book?
No. So I just discovered this randomly Googling myself, and this book is for sale at places like the Harvard bookstore. And that sounds awesome, except that I didn't publish this book.
This is the Human-Robot Interaction Podcast. I am your host, Christoph Bartmek. When did you do your PhD?
I finished my PhD in 2016.
And when was this book published?
Just recently, I think.
Wow, okay, that's interesting. And you had nothing to do with this publishing?
I had nothing to do with this publishing.
Wow, that's definitely weird. Whoever did this, how did they get their hands on your thesis?
Well, that was probably pretty easy because it's publicly available. I did my PhD at Florida State, and so Florida State University posts all of their dissertations online, so anybody can access them. If anyone listening to this podcast wants to read my thesis, you're more than welcome to.
All right, but that also means that if there's a book sale, you don't get any royalties, do you?
That's correct.
Wow, that's definitely a new type of publishing. So, what is in the book?
I actually don't know. All I know is the title is very similar to the title of my dissertation, but I haven't seen a copy of the book, so I don't know.
I looked at the cover, and it seems legitimate. I mean, there's an illustration, everything. It seems quite fitting.
The funny thing is, if I had taken this to a publisher and that's the cover that they provided for me, I would have been pretty happy. It's actually a very nice cover for my book and very topical.
So somebody must have invested a certain amount of work into this. And when you look at the publisher on Amazon, it says Irfan, which in Arabic, I looked it up, means wisdom, which kind of seems fitting. But the more interesting part, of course, is like who is the actual publisher. And we asked Anton Angelo, our famous librarian, to help us with this. And he was able to confirm that the ISBN number of this book tracks back to Ingram. Ingram is a publisher, and they also have a self-publishing arm called Ingram Spark. So possibly somebody used them to publish the book. Or not, we don't know.
Yeah, I have no idea.
It's also conceivable that maybe somebody just used ChatGPT and recreated your thesis.
It's totally possible. Maybe it's one of those hallucinations where it just sort of grabbed something similar to my dissertation.
So my question is, what's the business model here?
I have no idea. I don't know why anyone... I mean, this is going to sound bad, but I don't know why anyone would want to read my dissertation.
Well, it's not so much about reading it. It's more about making money for publishing it or after publishing it, because you don't get the royalties, right?
Yeah.
And I could imagine that the self-improvement market, and particularly anything what psychology, would be potentially popular. Right? We've got a whole shelf in airports around this literature. What would you think if you had found your book on the airport?
I would have been very surprised. I don't know. But yeah, I could totally see, with less technical language, I could totally see someone being interested in the contents of my thesis if written for a popular audience.
So the question is this a form of flattery, in a sense that they didn't copy my thesis? Maybe my thesis is even worse than yours.
I don't know.
Probably. but it might be more appealing to a general public.
Maybe. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know why they chose me, or if they chose me. Maybe they've done this to a million people, and I was just one of many that they happened to choose.
Now, that's a really interesting question, because a one-off seems a lot of effort with not much return. If you would do this at scale, it's a whole different story.
Yeah, it might make sense if you could scrape, say, everyone's name at Florida State University who published a thesis and then publish all of them. Odds are someone's going to buy one of those books.
Well, since this is all done by print on demand, there are no upfront costs. So whoever is producing these copies doesn't have to invest any money into it. So the book only gets printed once it's ordered. So there are no upfront costs. So if you do this at scale, let's say with hundreds of thousands of books, this could be a business model.
Yeah, maybe. I think what's puzzling about it is how did they get the cover to be so nice if they weren't spending any time or effort on it? I don't know.
Maybe we should try to put the title of your book into one of those AI image generators and see what comes up. I mean, that could be sufficient.
Yeah, maybe it is.
I think this is a really interesting question, and I think we should investigate it. What do you think?
Yeah, let's check it out.
So I already went ahead and I actually ordered a copy of your book, and it will be delivered to your address in a couple of weeks.
Wow, that's very exciting.
So once it arrives, please call me and tell me what's in the book.
Okay.
I ordered the book from Amazon. While waiting, I started to search for similar cases. Rarely anything was ever new. After some Googling, I found a newspaper article about Richard Elliott from 2023. His thesis was also published as a book. I decided to call him.
So my name is Richard Elliott. I am a lecturer in European philosophy at Birkbeck College in the University of London.
When did you complete your PhD?
So I completed the PhD in March of 2022.
What is the title of your thesis?
My thesis had the very catchy title of Productive Omissions in Nietzsche's Philosophical Psychology.
What happened to your thesis?
My thesis was recommended to me on an Amazon listing under a slightly different name. One word was changed in the name. Upon investigating, I discovered that the thesis was being listed as well as on Amazon, on Barnes & Noble, Waterstones, and Blackwell's websites, among others.
Did you publish your thesis as a book?
I did not, apart from the online repository that the university where I undertook my PhD had it online. I had made no efforts to publish it outside of articles featured as parts of chapters from the thesis. The earlier listings of the book listed the publishers usually as one called Remod, R-E-M-O-D. There remains a Google listing for the so-called book, and the publisher seems to have changed on that listing to a publishing house called For Our Son.
No, that's very interesting. And did you ever buy that book?
Some of my friends and colleagues attempted to buy colleagues. In the end, their money was returned to them, likely because of the efforts I had already taken to have the listings taken down, for example, on Amazon and Waterstones and Blackwell's. I never saw a physical copy of the book. Unfortunately, in some ways, I would have quite liked to have it as a memento.
It would have been interesting to see if they had changed anything to the book on the interior, because, well, the book, let's call it the book, had a cover. Did you create the cover?
No, I didn't create the cover. The cover, as featured on listings that I was made aware of, featured a sort of very AI-looking image of Nietzsche, who was the philosopher of focus in my dissertation, in my PhD thesis. And in the image of Nietzsche, he was looking considerably hunkier, let's say, than he does normally in photographs. My name was included on the cover. The thesis title was repeated with one minor word change. The thing that was a little worrying, however, is that the original title of my thesis was relegated to the subtitle. The main title added to the listing was, quote, Nietzsche's philosophical psychology, end quote, which is worrying because another respected Nietzsche scholar had published recently a monograph with this exact same name with Oxford University Press, I believe in 2021.
That's very confusing. So whoever did this put a little bit of effort into it because the cover had to be created, slight changes had to be made. So it's probably not completely automated. Could you imagine any kind of motive for why somebody would like to do that?
No, I have wondered about this, whether it was something automated, whether there's some kind of harvesting, let's say, software that was collecting online thesis work from various scholars or PhD students in the process of trying to market them. I had published an article with a respected philosophy website called the Daily News about this issue when I discovered the listings online. And in response to that article, I would say around a dozen people contacted me, having searched for their own work in similar circumstances. And in comparing what my case looked like with theirs, there were similar kinds of AI generated imagery. There were similar small changes to titles, for example. So in terms of an individual motive, I can't say. I would be surprised and saddened if there were, but that's where my speculation has to end, I'm afraid.
Now that it was clear that there were other cases of thesis theft, I started to dig deeper. I tried the reverse image search on Google to find Andy's book cover image, but could not find it. I then started to search for the Irfan publisher, but I could not find any traces either. I turned to my chief librarian, Anton Angelo. He and his friends were able to find out that the ISBN number was associated with the self-publishing platform Ingram Spark. I contacted them and asked them if they could get me in touch with Irfan, to no avail. They replied that they cannot give out the details about their clients due to privacy and security. This does make sense. Hi, Andy.
Hi, Christoph.
Did you get the book?
I got the book, and it has words in it, so it's not like completely blank. It has the cover that it's supposed to have according to the website, and it has my dissertation in it.
Okay, that's peculiar. Does it have all of your thesis?
It has most of my thesis, but they cut out the acknowledgements bit and the table of contents, so it just goes straight into the thesis. It doesn't have any of the preamble stuff that presumably would give away that this is a dissertation rather than a book that's meant to be a book.
And the references, are the references in?
References are also not in, but they do include the appendices, like all of the questionnaires that I used and the ethics approval that I had for the thesis.
Okay. So what has changed on the front cover?
The biggest thing is one of the words in my title is different. So the title of my thesis is Cognitive Miserliness Preserves Self-Regulatory Resources. And in this book, it's called Cognitive Frugality Preserves Regulatory Resources.
Okay. So whoever did this put a little bit of effort into the cover design, changed the title, and cut out a couple of pages.
Yeah, so it's not like they just copied the whole thing. They changed some things, and it seems like it must be in deliberate ways because Otherwise, why would they cut out the acknowledgement section specifically? And why would they change one word in the title? That seems suspicious to me.
Is the name of the title repeated inside? Cognitive Frugality. So they also changed this page.
Yeah.
So the first inside page is changed as well.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And is there any information about the publisher of this book in it?
Well, yes and no. There's like an ISBN number on the back, and there's something that says printed in the USA, and there's a QR code, and then there's even a barcode. But it doesn't really say who published it or what the copyright is or anything like that you would expect from a normal kind of book.
On the website on Amazon, it says the publisher is Irfan. Is there any information about Irfan in this book?
Not that I can see.
Okay. So there's no way of contacting the publisher now at all because there's no information.
There's no information, yeah.
Okay. This is going to be an interesting detective work now to figure out how we can get a hold of these people.
I think so.
We had a couple of ideas now, and we've been thinking about why. Why would you do this? Right?
Yeah, I don't know.
So one of the hypotheses I had until today was maybe it's the references. If you make more publications, even with slightly different names, but as soon as a new publication will be picked up by Google Scholar, and it will double the amount of citations that you give. And whoever is on the other side and maybe wants to have one would benefit from it.
That's right.
But as we can see in this book, there are no references. This can't be it.
Yeah.
Do you think this book is going to sell a lot?
Gee, part of me hopes so. But no, I think that's very unlikely. I think not very many people are going to want to read my dissertation. Because it reports on 3 studies, and most of it focuses on the methodological details and statistical analyses of these 3 studies. I can't imagine that being a popular seller.
Unless you only look at the cover and only the title, and that might be all the people look at. And on Amazon, that's the only thing they see, because there's no look inside. So people just buy the cover and the title. That's all they do.
Yeah. And you might see it, and it is a nice cover, and I think the topic's interesting, but I might be a little bit biased.
Have you checked the Amazon sales rank?
I have not.
Okay, let's do that. Let's go to Amazon and see formative. Let's see what we got. Okay, I got your book here, published in November 26, 23. You are the author. Publishers, Irfan. Okay, bestseller rank. You are in place 6,550,000 something
Yes.
in all of the books.
Top 10 million. That's pretty good.
In cognitive behavioral therapy, you are at 1,096.
Wow, that's pretty good, especially because it has nothing to do with cognitive behavioral therapy.
In cognitive neuroscience and neuropsychology, you are at 2,603. And in medical cognitive psychology, you are at 9,178.
Okay, well, it's not really about any of those topics either.
Well, these are broad categories
Yeah.
that probably either the person who published this would have selected these or they're automatically assigned by Amazon. We don't know that. Can we have a comparison? What would be like a book in the field that's similar to this, that you know exists for real and it sells?
Like a real book, Thinking Fast and Slow.
Oh, that's the big one.
Yeah, that will be very popular.
That will be extremely popular. Here we go. Daniel Kahneman, he recently passed away. Huh?
Yeah, it was a real loss for the field.
Yeah. So here we go. He is bestseller rank 531 of all books on Amazon.
That's pretty good.
That's pretty good.
Yeah.
Number 3 in cognitive psychology. Number 4 in medical cognitive psychology.
There are books more popular than that in cognitive psychology.
Okay. So bestsellers in medical cognitive psychology. Number 1, Chaser, Unlocking the Genius of Doc What? Okay. Number 2, The Awakening Brain, The New Science of, I can't read the full title, Then Thinking Fast, Thinking Slow. So, okay. So, but the first one is called Chaser.
Huh.
The Genius of Dog Who Knows 1,000 Words.
Oh, about a dog that they've taught words? Okay, I can see why people would read about that.
Oh, you know about this?
Yeah. I think
Okay.
they like trained a dog to respond to different English words, and they're basically seeing how many words a dog
Okay.
can learn. That sounds pretty interesting.
Well, anyway, so that's just... okay, that's not a fair comparison.
No. No. I can't imagine this has sold too many books.
Okay.
My guess is that it sold exactly one, which is
The one that we have on the table?
That would be my guess.
Well,
But
okay.
you never know.
Let's entertain this idea. I would say if you take a PDF, create a cover, do it like this, it would take you half an hour to an hour of work. And you maybe gain $5, $6 in sales from this. So,
Is that how much you would get for one book?
well, I could try to look up what the production costs are, but typically speaking, revenues are between 5 and 10% of the sales price. So, what is your sales price?
I think you spent $36 on it.
Oh, did I?
I think so.
Oh dear.
It wasn't cheap.
Okay, here we are. It is currently at 35 US dollars. So, yeah. I mean, this is the thing you have to put into a relationship. So this book is not particularly thick. I mean, the price
Yeah.
will change depending on how many pages you have.
Yeah.
So this is a relatively thin book, and I could maybe try to look it up later, how much it would cost, let's say at Ingram and Spark, to the printing costs alone.
Yeah.
Was your thesis in color or was it in black and white?
Oh, I believe it was in color, and so they've printed it in black and white to
Okay.
maybe save money.
Yeah, it's definitely much cheaper.
Yeah.
Okay, so if it's not money, if it's not citations, what is it?
I don't know. Well, it can't be prestige because I'm the only one who will get the prestige. I mean, my name's on the cover of the book.
Unless somebody would try to do the opposite and damage your reputation.
Could be, but I mean, it's just my dissertation. There's nothing embarrassing about it. It's already publicly available at my university's website.
If it's not money, if it's not something good, if it's not something bad, is it just nuisance? Is it just a person having fun?
Just trolling. But they didn't even contact me to let me know. I just found this out randomly because I was scrolling my own Google pages.
Okay, but how about if somebody, whoever it might be, might have some beef with you and did this just to annoy you?
Maybe. I don't know. It's not that annoying to me. So if that's what it is,
It's failing?
they failed.
Well, you are a universal, very pleasant person, so it's very hard for me to imagine that somebody would have beef with you.
Yeah, me too.
That would be interesting. Huh?
Yeah.
It seems so random.
Yeah, I agree. I have no idea why anyone would have done this.
Yeah.
It's really weird.
Oh, well, we'll find out more next time. Thank you,
All right,
Andy.
Thanks.
Irfan did not provide any contact details in the book. This was starting to become a dead end. The breakthrough came when I noticed that on the book reseller Books Direct website, I could click on the Irfan publisher link, and it directed me to a page that listed all its books. And there it was, a second occurrence. Aaliyah Warner's book, Mindfulness as a Protective Factor for the Relationship Between Self-Injury. It seemed similar to Andy's case. A quick search revealed that this was indeed her PhD thesis from 2015. I contacted her and she confirmed that she had not published the thesis as a book. Where there's smoke, there's fire. Now that I knew that there were others, I started to search Amazon's catalog more systematically. I looked for health books published around November 23 at the $40 price point of a sole author. Bingo! I found an avalanche of theses. Within a few hours, I contacted more than 30 authors, and they all confirmed that these were fraudulent publications. A few were aware of them, and even less tried to take actions already. They all faced the same problem with not being able to determine who the publisher is. It also became obvious that the purpose of these books is money. Trying to sell one thesis is hardly worth the effort, but if you sell hundreds, if not thousands, then this can earn a substantial income. Ingram Spark does have an online form that authors can use to make a copyright claim, but that would probably not result in more information about the thieves. I decided to seek legal advice. Ursula, could you please introduce yourself?
Kia ora. I'm a professor in the Faculty of Law at the University of Canterbury. I've been there for nearly 30 years now, specialising in media law.
Wonderful. It's good to have an expert in the room because I have some legal questions.
Okay, have a go. I can't claim to be expert in all the law, but I'm happy to toss some ideas around.
Does a traditional book publisher have the responsibility to check copyright infringements of its authors?
A traditional book publisher doesn't have any actual legal liability to check the contents of what they publish. What they have is an onus, and it's only sensible that they try and limit any potential liability that they've got. So if they're sensible, they'll either be checking things themselves or they'll have legal advice maybe to help them as well to deal with things such as breach of copyright or defamation, that sort of thing.
Are they responsible afterwards for the content they publish?
Yes, and again, it varies depending on the area of the law, but in terms of breach of copyright, they would, I think, in terms of our law, be seen as a publisher because they're copying. And as long as they fall within the definition of a copier and a publisher in the Act, then they could be liable.
Is a print-on-demand self-publishing company a traditional publisher?
There's no legal magic around this idea of a traditional legal publisher. So the question at issue here is simply, would a print-on-demand self-publishing company fall within the required definitions in the Copyright Act, if we're just talking about copyright? So the question would be, are they breaching copyright and are they a publisher? And again, I think that is possible.
Possible, well, maybe we can try to home in on this. This company is called Ingram Spark, which is a subdivision of Ingram. Ingram is, by all means, a traditional publisher, and they created a platform where people can upload their own books and sell them through their channels. Wouldn't that mean that they're a publisher? They duplicate the book, they print it, they do the logistics, they do the payments, they earn a fee when they sell the book. So it seems very identical to a traditional book publisher.
Yes, I agree with that. In terms of the law, one of the ways you breach the Copyright Act is by copying. And you can also breach it, in fact, by instructing someone else to copy something that you don't. I think the person who uploads something into a print-on-demand site is copying if the work is not their own. And then I think the site itself, in providing and making this available to the public in a nice, easy way, is copying as well. Yeah.
Okay, by definition of that, we're currently focused a bit on New Zealand law, but
sure,
it's probably relatively internationally similar.
Well, I'm not an international copyright expert, but copyright law does tend towards being similar in jurisdictions because there's lots of benefits of that. So that's all I can really comment there.
Now, what follows then is the question is, does Ingram Spark have the responsibility to check copyright infringements of their customers and be responsible for the content that's being published?
I think that's arguable because they are copying, and that may fall under the Act.
So that's a clear yes as you can from a lawyer?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. If a self-publishing company is not a publisher, but just a platform, what obligations do platforms have?
When you say just a platform, it's interesting that you use that language because, of course, in relation to some crimes and other areas of law around the world, mere platforms do have some special defences by virtue of the fact that they can say, well, we haven't actually been involved in this process. We're merely we're a conduit. We're merely passing information on. And so in places like America, for example, you have the Communications Decency Act, which has a special, what's called a safe harbour defence in relation to offensive material for so-called mere platforms. We don't have anything like that in New Zealand, and there's nothing like that, in fact, in the Copyright Act. I don't think these print-on-demand self-publishing companies are mere platforms. I don't think that's what they are. They are actually providing a way for people to upload something that they want to publish, and then they're providing a way for that to be published by other customers, see the title of the book and decide they want it or whatever. So they're actively involved in it. They're not merely passing something on.
That's actually a very interesting point. So the fact that they are the ones who physically print the book and send it out is what disqualifies them for this defense of being just a platform.
In terms of our copyright legislation, I think the act of printing and sending it out when triggered by a customer means they are copying. They simply fit the definition of copying there. Or another way it can come under the Act is as a breach is by issuing copies to the public, and it can be seen in that way as well.
Andy, I have some news for you.
Okay, what's that?
I looked up how much it costs to print your thesis.
How much does it cost?
$2.40.
$2.40. How much did I pay?
$36 at a discount, so the original price was $40.
Ah.
So I think we wasted a good $37 on this.
Okay. All right.
So the profit margin is immense for this particular thesis, but that's also partly because your thesis is relatively short.
Yeah.
So, maybe that's worthwhile. I'm not sure.
I guess so. I mean, even if they sell one or two of these things, they've made $70.
Yeah. The other news is that I found a large number of similar cases to yours.
Really?
Yes. So within an hour or so, I was able to find around 30, 40, even 50 theses that all follow the same pattern.
Interesting.
And I contacted these authors, and they all confirmed that this is a thesis, and they didn't agree to have it to be published. So we're all in the same boat here. And that solves one mystery that we had, which was what's going on and why would anybody do this?
Yeah.
The answer is they're doing it at scale and for profit, because only your thesis doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
But if you do that, hundreds of thousands of these theses, it'll be worthwhile.
Because a few people will want someone's thesis, and that's enough to make some money.
And the other important aspect here is that you cannot look into the book prior to buying it. So there's no information about what you actually get other than, let's say, the abstract and summary that you'll get and the cover image. That's all you'll ever see.
Okay.
So they don't know how technical the thesis might be, and that this is not a book for popular consumption, let's say.
Right. Yeah, well, we couldn't read my thesis until we bought it. Yeah, we weren't sure if it was like the full version or if they had made it easier to read or anything.
Yeah. The next step would be to contact Ingram Spark and confront them with these results. Would you be okay if I include you in this endeavor?
Yeah, let's do it.
Because I also had legal advice from Ursula, and she motivated me to proceed with this, and she thinks this is a clear-cut case, pretty much.
Okay.
This is going to get interesting.
Interesting. Okay.
Thanks to Ursula's help, I drafted a letter on behalf of the 15 authors who decided to participate. I sent a list of fraudulent books together with our demands to Ingram Spark. They responded after 10 days. They confirmed that they took down all the theses, but refused to take responsibility for the offense. They argued that each content provider certified to us that they had the full right and title to the titles they upload to our service. As such, they are fully responsible for that content, and any infringement claims should be directed to them. This is just not true. Ingram Spark prints and distributes the manuscripts. They are therefore the publisher. Ursula already pointed out that this safe harbor defense does not hold, at least not in New Zealand. They sent us a list of the offenders' email addresses. They all had the same pattern, such as dannyflakes@dannyflakes.cloud. The domain names were registered around the time of the book publications. There are no web pages on these domain names. You just get an error message. Clearly, these email addresses are just a disposable front to their operations. I reminded them that we want to have full contact details, including address and bank details. How else could anybody ever charge them with anything? In particular, if the perpetrators live in another country. Spark responded that this was all they would provide. This is rather disappointing, since they protected the thieves by withholding the essential contact and bank details. Nobody has any chance to get a hold of these thieves, since they can be anywhere on the planet. The next step would be to get the lawyers involved, and I believe that Ingram knows that barely anybody has the financial background to afford this. So what can you do when your thesis got stolen? First of all, don't buy your own thesis. It might be the only copy ever sold, and you make it worth their while.
I think you should, whoever is wanting to make a complaint on this basis, should take advantage of those processes. And obviously firms like this, they offer them now because they've been pushed to offer some sort of remedy, because this, probably when they first set up their business, they had nothing like that at all, and they just hoped to, publish away and get away with as much as their business model and make as much money as possible. Then they probably started receiving complaints and realised that they had to, if they were not to be pursued themselves, set up some sort of process. So I think that's probably the best that any person who's been wronged in this way can give.
There are several solutions available. The first is to add a visual watermark to your thesis.
I think the best way to do that is do what they do with photos online now as well. You put a watermark on the document so everyone knows that, it's a copy that's not the final copy and it belongs to somebody else. Maybe the university needs to think about doing that in relation to the repository and documents in the repository. Or you could put your own watermark on the copy that you submit to the repository and have a talk to them about it, if that's what you're doing. That would, I think, stop companies like this trying to make money out of these copies that come from library repositories and so on.
While it could deter thieves from using your PDF file, this is not an absolute protection, since the thieves do not allow customers to view the interior pages of the book prior to purchase. But when the thieves select the thesis to upload, they are less likely to use yours. If your thesis is already in a repository, contact their manager to add a watermark to the existing file. The library might even do it for you. Another solution would be for you to self-publish your thesis through Ingram Spark. If you set a low price, then you will push the illegal copies of your thesis out of the market. But there are also some disadvantages to this solution.
That's a practical solution if you can be bothered doing it, but you're it's not very good for your reputation as an academic, is it, that you're prepared to put your book out there at a very low price? That's the other issue that relates to the harm. that happens by a self-publishing company doing this sort of thing, which is that, within academia, there's kind of a low opinion of self-publishing in a way, isn't there? And so one thing I was thinking of mentioning was that you have rights under the Copyright Act that are called moral rights, and they might be engaged in these circumstances. You could argue that this happening is a form of derogatory treatment of your work, and that might come under that part of the Copyright Act.
So, this is where the story ends. We successfully took down the stolen thesis, but failed to identify or prosecute the thieves. I'm certain that this scam will continue. The only thing left is to raise awareness of this problem and expose Ingram's shameful behavior. I will put the link to Ingram's copyright infringement claim form into the show notes. I will also add the email at Ingram you can contact to express your concern. Maybe, if enough of us speak up, they will reconsider their policy.